I don't know if you've noticed, but in the last few weeks, there have been a lot of conversations about whether or not the dreaded power crisis is back. There's been a lot of explanations as to what is happening. Tonight, we're going to get into some of the details. We've been giving some assurances. We're going to look into those assurances and see if indeed we can rely on that, especially in the wake of some of the fluctuations that we've also experienced over the last few weeks. And so we're going to ask that fundamental dreaded question in the wake of the power outages: is the feared Dumsor back? We've seen many areas, several power cuts in parts of the country in recent times, and it has reignited that debate over again. Now, the President Akufo-Addo had announced during the last State of the Nation address, I'm sure you listened to him, that his administration had effectively ended the crisis in the sector. Now, JoyNews checks indicate the current outages are as a result of a shortfall in electricity, right? Supply of about 200 megawatts, but that's not an official explanation. Now, this was blamed mainly on the lack of natural gas supply from Nigeria due to ongoing maintenance works that, again, we've heard the explanations coming about. But as to how much exactly is that translating when it comes to megawatts lost to the system, we're yet to get clarity on that particular bit of it. Now, the Deputy Minister, though, who is in charge of power, has been explaining last week, assured that the current challenges will be resolved first week of March. We are in the first week of March. In fact, we've heard a particular date put to this, which is the 7th of March. This just after Thursday. That's Friday, to be very specific. A lot of people are placing a lot of focus and emphasis on the particular date, but there is a great deal of skepticism because of the history we've had recently. ECG has assured the company that Ghanaians of no more power supply by the 7th. We're waiting for that to see if that pans out. Now, the company says that it will be no timetable for Dumsor. Many have called for this, including the minority, that if you are shedding load, even if it's for a day, give us a timetable. The ECG says you're not going to get a timetable that Ghanaians are requesting. The company says it has had to suspend scheduled maintenance works in Ghana until maintenance is completed on the West Africa gas pipeline, which is the fundamental reason why we're having this particular conversation. And so really is the dreaded Dumsor back. It's something we're going to be interrogating today and trying to examine whether we can trust the 7th March deadline given by the ECG and the Ministry of Energy for a resolution to the current fluctuations and outages that you've seen in your homes and factories across the country. Stay with that for the answers. You're live on the PM Express tonight. My guest in the studio is the Member of Parliament for Bongo, Mr. Edward Bauer, who used to be at the Energy Ministry as a communications consultant. They're also with me in the studio is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Mr. Boache joins us in the studio as well. On the phone line with me is the spokesperson for the Energy Ministry, Mr. Damwa is on the line. Mr. Damwa, thank you for your time here on PM Express.
Thank you very much, Evans. Good evening to you. Good evening to all your viewers. I apologize for not being in the studios tonight. I wish I could have, but other assignments have also placed me elsewhere.
I want to quickly get the latest on the situation with the power. I mean, if you live in Ghana, you know that in the last few weeks there have been challenges. I'm pretty sure that there have been attempts to address this. There have been dates fixed for this to end. As of tonight, what is the situation with the power supply challenge?
Thank you very much, Evans. As you have rightly said, there's been a couple of challenges with electricity supply in the country over the last several days. But as of tonight, there's been a great improvement. I'm still monitoring the system, and I would want to await Gridco's report, which is the official report that tells us what the situation has been tonight. But I have an app on my phone. I believe that Mr. Bauer would have seen that app before. I believe that Mr. Wachi has also, been a frequent user of that application, and that tells us exactly what is happening. And without trying to give too much specifics, since I'm awaiting Gridco's report officially, I'll say that there's been a great improvement in the system as we speak. A very big improvement.
Roughly, how much load have you been shedding?
It's difficult. If you say how much load have we been shedding, are you talking about tonight or over
I mean, roughly over the last 2 weeks when we've had the challenge.
So it's not been stagnant. It's been based on, dispatch and what happens at the point, mostly at peak time. So you can say that sometimes we've had as much as 150, 180. Sometimes we've had about 100 or 50 megawatts. It depends. I would want to give you an official report for this.
I mean, fundamentally, we're still shedding load as of tonight.
The word load shedding is what I'm a bit uncomfortable with, but there has been some challenges in some areas.
Okay, I mean, I get the discomfort with load shedding. What time will you prefer?
We're having challenges, technical challenges that have led to some power outages in some areas. So I think that I'm more comfortable with power outages as opposed to load shedding.
So what
you may argue with me that it's an issue of semantics, but it also has more than a surface meaning when you look at it.
Well, what are the challenges exactly?
Okay, so as you may have been aware, we had a West African gas pipeline pigging project ongoing, which was a contractual maintenance, which was part of the agreement. So we had to do that. We made alternate fuels available, and the alternate fuels were also about to be dispatched. We needed to do some changes in the plants to ensure that they could uptake alternate fuels. However, some of the plants had some technical challenges. One of them had a governor. I think we also had one of it with the turbine strip. And so that also accumulated to aggravate the situation. But we had some vibrations in one of the plants. We had quite a couple of issues, about 5 or so plants. I could WhatsApp that to you immediately. And that led to some issues moving forward. And we had to do all that it takes and have our engineers work around the clock. After the 23rd of February, as WAPCO has already said, they had finished with the pigging process. We went into the process of analysis. But we're also very careful in communicating this to the Ghanaian public, because we're mindful of the fact that, in as much as we may have finished it, we still had to ensure that the analysis looked good and everything was okay. The analysis is not yet over. For the next several months, we'll continue to look at the analysis to ensure that the pipeline's integrity is solid. But as we do that, as of tonight, I'm sure that some gas is flowing. But these are, as you may know, commissioning phases. The TTIP project is also simultaneously being run, because once we're not going to have gas, then we decided to use that to ensure that the Tamataka Internet Connection project is done. We are now at the commissioning phase of that project. So though we have gas through the pipeline going to some plants, we are not totally ramped up to full levels yet. We still have alternate fuel for some of the plants. I'm not aware that AXA, for instance, has about a couple of days supply, and Sen Power as well also has some of these things. But right after such a heavy maintenance period, you wouldn't get all the machines running at full peak. That is why I'm being very measured in the information that I'm giving out concerning these technicalities. I would want to, as I've said, await the final report. We are still going through the commissioning phase. Gridco, by in about an hour or two, will be able to give us a full report, and then we can speak to it.
But these maintenance issues that we've been told about, these are issues that were pre-planned. In fact, we knew about this as of last year. And in fact, the ministry is on record to have stated, when you became aware, that you were putting in place alternative measures to prevent us from experiencing the challenges we are currently experiencing. This is clearly a symptom of failed planning, which is why we are where we are.
I would have been very happy to agree with you if that was the truth, but that is not the situation. Even I'll give you an analogy, a very simple one. That assume that you have a car and you realize that you're scheduled for maintenance, let's say on a Tuesday morning. So Monday, you made all the necessary arrangements and rented another vehicle to ensure that for the 2 days that your car was going to be, with the mechanics for planned maintenance, you're going to have another vehicle to move around with. You have gotten the vehicle, you check the service history of the vehicle, you've bought enough fuel for the vehicle, and so you are ready to go. And then come Wednesday morning, you dressed up, you got to the vehicle, you sparked it, and it refused to spark. And you've done everything that you could, but it has refused to spark. Someone might say that you've been very careless or you were unable to plan adequately. That is why you are without a vehicle on a Wednesday morning, particularly if you may have happened to have an important meeting. But you and I would appreciate the fact that you knew that your car was going to undergo a planned maintenance and you made alternate arrangements. However, those alternate arrangements also may not necessarily have met the standards and may have failed you on that day. This is similar to what has happened. We knew that there was going to be planned maintenance. As I was stated in that press release that was done on the 17th of January 2020, we made alternate arrangements to ensure that fuel was going to be available. Actually, per our calculations, we're going to lose about 750 megawatts of power, and it was going to be replaced by 780 megawatts of power. Actually, even if you look at it carefully, some have said that we have set up to about 200 megawatts of power. Even if that's the case, that should tell you that we lost 750 megawatts. And so, all things being equal, about 500 megawatts was brought on board around that time to ensure that we maintain power. This means that we made alternate arrangements. However, some of it hasn't worked to expectation. That is why we've had the difficulty.
Can you be specific? Which ones haven't worked to expectations?
Even like I have said, we've had some challenges, technical challenges with some of the plants. And that is how come we've had the challenges that we've had.
Okay. Kind of hold on for me. Benjamin, so he mentions the access to the updates that you normally you'll get on what the load situation is in the country. Do you have access to that?
Good evening to Honorable Bauer and Nana on the line. I think that is one of the problems we've had. Greco had a portal where you could actually see the demand and supply balance and actually track in real time what plants are generating and what the projected demand looks like. So you can actually see whether there is a deficit or not. And it's not working as we speak. So I heard Nana say that portal is available. I don't know whether it's been changed, but it doesn't exist. And
it used to.
It used to function correctly, but now it's not working. It's difficult to get data on how much we are shedding, how much is being generated, what plants are actually working as we speak. Because the institution that we fed into that portal, if you go to Energy Commission, you would see in their rooms, you will see the display of the real-time generation. It's not available. PRC is not available. So now they are resorting to, the files that will be shared from Greco's control room. So if you really want to know the situation as we speak, it's only Greco that, micromanage that kind of data. It's not available to anybody else. And that is what I do know, unless things have changed. But I just checked the portal, it's not working. So as we speak, I don't know which plant is working, which is not working, how much deficit there is in the system, but it wasn't the case until recently. Yeah.
To the fundamental point, he just explained that as far as they are concerned, this particular issue is just a simple case of plant maintenance that they've done. They did alternatives, but alternatives also failed them. Is that your understanding as well?
No, I think there is a deficit. I mean, he's right. There is no gas from Nigeria. The gas from Takoradi at the same time is not flowing. What happened was that there was a planned maintenance, what technically called pigging, which I'm uncomfortable to pour on the ordinary consumer who is only interested in power, and it was planned to happen within this period. And then there was the attempt to coincide a commissioning of some of the work that ENI has been doing to reverse huge volumes from the West. So they coincided those two activities to ensure that they can fix the pipeline. So it was a planned activity. We knew what the shortfall was going to look like, and therefore what we needed is to have enough liquid fuel. Fortunately for us as a country, we have invested money into dual fuel plants. What that means is that some of the plants can switch. If you don't have gas, they can switch to light crude oil. So that is security built into these plants. So then what you have to do is to ensure that you have liquid fuel in the absence of gas. But my information really is that when the gas went out, there wasn't enough fuel to be used, for the plants that can replace the deficit that has been created. And that is why we are where we are today.
So it's about gas?
Yeah, it's about gas, about fuel, actually. So gas has to, be cut because they had to clean the pipeline, as I mentioned. But the good news is that the cleaning is ahead of schedule. It would have lasted to about, I think, end of April. But they realized that there isn't enough debris in the pipeline. So that has actually accelerated the process. So they're done. I think they're going to start commissioning and introducing gas into the pipeline. And that is the relief we do have, at this point.
So the alternatives that they put in place also then lacked the fuel to run and give us the power that we need to not experience outages.
I think that is really what is happening, because the tanks are there. The tanks are there to receive liquid fuel if we had procured them to be able to.
So it comes back to the planning question then, I guess.
It comes back to planning and financing.
Okay.
Because fuel, you have to go and buy it. Yeah. And we keep dancing around the energy sector challenges and the debt situation, and it keeps escalating. The liquidity of the sector is not fluid. It's always threatened. We haven't completely, eliminated that threat. And it's keeping us tired of this kind of conversation, because we take 2 steps and then another
back to the same point.
And we keep talking about whether it should be Dumsor, it should be load shedding, it should be scheduled maintenance. And I think the semantics and the words are becoming too much for the ordinary consumer, whose interest is really power and not the word. So I think maybe we need to elevate the conversation to keep the tap on, to say, how do we fix this problem, even when the lights are on, so that we don't wait for the light to go off and then we are struggling whose job it was to bring fuel. I'm not sure we are interested in that. We have to fix the energy sector problem. Yeah. And I think we need to keep the conversation going. How much of the debt is being paid by the month, by the day, as it rolls out, so that we know how we are fixing it. You know what happened with the PDS problem. And that was an arrangement all of us appreciated, was to solve the energy sector problem, to strengthen the supply, the distribution wing, because that is what the sector revolves around. If you
that's where the money is
power,
made.
That's where the money is made. If you buy power of $2 million or $1 million, and you cannot account for 25–30% of that power, what that means is that you take power from me, $1 million, and you can only pay me $750 million. It doesn't make sense. So the public has to then offset the difference. And that has been the trend for so long. So we need to really fix that problem. And that's why it's so disappointing that we managed PDS the way it went. And then we're back to square one. And promise after promise, track it. From January last year to the time, PDS was abrogated and the budget, and today, we've seen on public platform big conversation about how we fix the problem, but we're not making the attempts to actually do that. I don't know where we are, with the distribution side, but it is critical that we fix it, because ultimately, if government is the one that always has to cough the money to go and buy fuel, when I have paid my electricity bill, where is the money going to?
Yeah. I mean, let me bring in Edward. Edward, so back to the fundamentals. What do you know is the issue?
I think
so. Ben says it comes down to money.
I think
Energy Ministry says it's maintenance.
I think that Ben couldn't have captured it better. It's a question of planning and finance. And I'll explain them. Usually when you are producing anything, let's use the energy sector, we're using energy. If I'm supposed to be supplying you power, or no power, gas, you will offtake the gas. So anytime I'm going to do anything to my system that will let you not have the gas, I need to give you advance notice. So for example, if you look at VRA is the off-taker for the gas for Nigeria. And so definitely, because they knew that this was a scheduled maintenance on the pig and pay, it's just to be able to, the long and short of it is to establish the integrity of the pipeline for flow of gas to come. They had told government of Ghana through VRA that look, and this was about somewhere April last year. So that's almost a year ago. That look, at this particular period, we are going to curtail the supply of gas because we will be doing some maintenance works on our pipelines. So make alternative arrangements. So they tell you that. Just as he has indicated, we have, particularly with the VRA plants, they are dual. In some of them, even they can do three. They can do diesel, they can do light crude oil, and they can do gas. And so when they tell you that, then you then kickstart your engineers, want to see the process of when the time comes to switch them. Again, the generators, I'm talking whether it's VRA, whether it is car power, whatever, would have to now look for alternative fuels. And in Ghana, most often than not, it is a liquid fuel. So it's either light crude oil, it is diesel that they will go for. So you stockpile that for that period. So for example, VRA will look at his finances and say, okay, so on the basis of this, I am going to do X, Y, Z. I need this amount of liquid fuel to be able to run within the period that the supplier says he's going to curtail the supply. Other companies will do the same thing. Government was given this sufficient time to do that. Today, the reason they are giving us is the fact that because of the maintenance work on the West Africa gas pipeline. The question you ask yourself is, why are we in that problem? When particularly we knew that we're not supposed to have gas within this period.
So the alternative arrangement.
So and you see, that's the reason why I'm asking, what is the alternative arrangement? I wish I was the one doing the question. So what was the alternative arrangement? Because the arrangement you were supposed to do was to get us, liquid fuel to run our plants. The question is it that you went into the market to look for the fuel and you didn't get? Or what was it? What is the alternative arrangement that is being done? The truth of the matter, if you talk to most of these generators, and they will talk to you off record, and you know the reason because of the environment in which we live in, they all tell you that the very reason why they are not doing this is because they have no fuel to run their generators. Not that the generators are not available.
So you don't have fuel because there's no money.
Yes, so that's the point we're making. So it's a question of that. And the reason why we use the issue of planning is the fact that, look, if I am a generator, I'm supposed to provide power for you. I know that in the first place, all the power I'm even producing, you're not even paying me. You're not paying me. Now, suddenly you tell me that I should go and take my own money again and go and buy fuel and come and run the plant to give it to you, which anyway you will not pay me. Why would I do that? What is my incentive? Yes. What is my incentive for that? I'm not in there for, I'm not a charity organization. I'm there for business. So I wouldn't do that. So who is supposed to then plan this? The government will decide to say that, look, these guys, we owe them. So since we owe them, asking them to buy their own fuels to run their own generators will be a problem. So let's look for money and buy fuel for them. And mostly you buy fuel and then offset it as part of your arrangement that you do with them. Government has not planned to buy that. So that is where the planning comes in. And the very reason why the government has not done that, you and I know, no government will want to put himself or herself in what they call it, in this state, because he has no money to buy it. So the issue is not what Mr. Dama was telling us. It is not about the fact that there are some tanker hitches here and there. Now, he talks about the reverse flow that came. Ben, just to inform you, GNPC was with us somewhere about 2 months ago. They told us that
when you say us, you mean the energy?
Oh, the energy committee. So my energy committee. You see, and already, even in terms of this, they actually started at least delivering at least 100 million scarf to what they call it, the eastern zone. So already some work had already been done there. The only reason why all these challenges is that the pipe is not available. And because the pipe is not available, and they cannot also buy fuel, we are in the situation that we're in. So it's not about what Mr. Damo is saying.
I mean, but let me bring Mr. Do I still have Mr. Damo on the line? Do I have Mr. Damo on the line?
Yes, please, you do.
Okay. Mr. Damo, so you've heard the conversation in the studio about the real reason why. I mean, there's agreement, really, both ASAP and Edward, that the real solution, the real problem here is one, because of lack of planning, but it's the fact that we're unable to procure the gas. If you can, the liquid oil that required
fuel, yes,
for the fuel. I mean, Edward asked the question, when we talk about alternative planning, what exactly did we do there? Because he says early last year we were told this was going to happen. So what precise planning went into getting us prepared for this week?
Okay, so Evans, I just want to draw your mind to a particular development that, as I have stated, as a result of this plant maintenance, we're to lose 750 megawatts of power, of electricity. Now, we made arrangements to replace it, as I've already said, with 780 megawatts of power. I do not think that any of the panelists in your studio will suggest that we have shed anywhere close to even 750 megawatts within that period. If no alternative plans were laid afoot to make up for the shortfalls, how come we're able to get the 500 megawatts of power? I'm saying this because you have stated that there is a consensus in your studio that there was a lack of alternative planning. Respectfully, I disagree, but I am also stating this position, that if indeed that was the case, then we shouldn't have been able to even find the 500 megawatts of power that has been widely reported to make up for the shortfall, to lead to about the 200 or so that has been widely reported as well. I am saying to you that, yes, indeed, we had alternative plans, but some faults developed. And it is these faults that have let us down. Because if you have fuel, no matter the quantity of fuel that you have, if you have the fuels and the plants are faulty, there's nothing you can do about it.
So, okay, so his point is, so you say the plants are faulty. Which plants specifically?
TICO, units 3 and 2, we had a problem with TAPCO, and then PON, unit 4. As I've already stated, I can send these things to you, but I can mention off the top of my head. What I remember is TICO unit 3 had a problem, jammed shaft. TICO unit 2 had a problem with the bore scoop. We had to do an inspection on that. TAPCO unit 2 had a vibration fault as well. And as I've already stated, BUI, I'm not sure whether it's unit 1 or 2, also had a governor fault, and we had to look at all of these things. And I'm saying to you that clearly, in as much as there's a consensus, the idea of a consensus and the lack of alternative fuel ignores the fact that these problems also developed. But I do not want to butt heads over all of these things. What I want to say to all of us, including the gentlemen in your studio, is that, listen, as a country, we've come to this point. For us, we've looked at this and we've managed this challenge this way. To the best of my knowledge, all of these things will come to a head, or will come to an end by the end of this week, hopefully. As I speak to you, the commissioning phase is on. I'm aware, as per the conversations I had this morning, that ENI was ready and willing to flow about 140 million scarf of gas today to be used for the commissioning phase. There were one or two issues about commercial agreements that had to be looked at. I'm sure that within the course of the day, they were looked at. I'm yet to cross-check whether the gas was flowed today or not. But as I have said, there's a general improvement in the system, and we are looking forward to the fact that by this weekend, all of these challenges would have ended.
Now, but there are plants in the east. What particularly was the plans for the plants in the east?
Well, you see, so that whole imbalance that was created also created quite a couple of problems for us, because some of the biggest challenges that we had within this period was that the voltage was fluctuating, and this was mostly because, as you have said, the plants in the east and the plants in the west balanced the grid out. So the instability that was created by the outages in the east created that fault for us. But as I have said to you, we had alternate fuel that were available. As I speak to you right now,
so just for clarity, what precisely then was the problem that caused the imbalance from the plants in the east? You mentioned that.
Yes, and like I have said, I do not have the full report in front of me as I speak, but what I'm aware of is that there were some faults. I've mentioned the ones that I remember off the top of my head immediately, but I can get those ones for you specifically. However, what I also want to say is that as I speak to you today as I speak to you, I know that AXA has fuel, I know that Power has fuel, and I can give you a full update of the kinds of fuel that was procured. So for me, that really, 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 with all due respect to the gentleman in the studio, despite the consensus that they have, is not the issue. However, we take all of their suggestions on board, but that may not necessarily be the reality.
I mean, does he answer the question for you,
No.
Because he's mentioned some of the plants are actually down.
He said certain things I didn't understand what he meant by the fluctuations and other things. I didn't understand.
No, but I mean for consumers, for consumers, we've seen fluctuations in power. I mean, at home, I've had that.
Yeah, the fluctuations.
I mean, surges and low voltage, etc.
We've had all those things, and that's why even ECG itself, and sometimes even VRA, they have what they call the substation enhancement project that is supposed to. Those things have been with us. We are talking about a deficit that is in the system, and the deficit has come as a result of the fact that we are unable to produce enough power to meet the demand. That is exactly the challenge we have here.
That is because plants were down. Plants had problems.
And that's how, you see, so when he says, and I'm trying to look, the plants in the east, we are looking, because all the things he talked about the west, and that's, he'll be talking about TAPCO, he'll be talking about TICO. In fact, now, car power is also down there, in the west. But in the east, we have the VRA plants. We have, for example, we have the KTPPP. That's a container power plant. We have it there, that runs on diesel. We have the TT1PP. We have the TT2PP. These are all plants that are there. We have the Senate plant. We're talking about Senate plant. That is the SNIT. You know, SNIT has a plant that is also there. That is about 110 or something. I'm not too sure about the megawatts that one produces. So we have all these plants. The question is, what is wrong with these plants? Because obviously, if these other plants are there, in fact, the MRP used to be there, but the MRP was converted into gas. So now they use purely just gas. But these plants, the other plants, are able to switch. Why are they not on? That's the question. Why are those plants not on?
But that's based on the assumption that they are off.
If you have, look, let me tell you, if you take just our thermal plants alone, in terms of dependable capacity, not installed, dependable capacity is supposed to be 2,748. If the government has always been singing that at the end of the day that what's the name? We have excess capacity in the system, and just thermal alone, dependable is 2,740. Sorry, no, it's not 48. It's 45. Then you have Akosombo. That gives you roughly dependable of about 900. Why do you still tell me that you are running at a deficit? There are these plans. So I know that some of the plans will knock off.
So
some of the plans will knock off.
The only reason that can explain that is that some of these plans are off.
Yes, so I can agree that. I can agree that.
But he mentioned some are off.
Asogli will go off. Asogli will go off because they use. Yes, when they use gas. I know Asogli will go off. What plant again? I'm just trying to look around. Well, most of the plants we have can run on diesel or light crude oil. So. And is it first, there must be an admission.
And those who run on diesel and light crude oil, if we're all empowering, shouldn't create a system where...
We shouldn't have this problem.
Should take care of peak demand?
It should take care of peak demand. Okay. Indeed. The only time they are putting off this light is during peak.
Yes.
Indeed, if you look at it, it's between 6 and around 10 o'clock when we use power. So normally when we are trying to calculate our demand, we'll calculate our demand on the basis of the peak. So that is the maximum you will need. You understand? As we speak now, the peak government has consistently said is around 2,700. As of September last year, the ECG said that the peak demand was 2,781. 81. 2,700 as of September 2019.
And the diesel plants and the light crude alone give us what?
And so I'm just giving you just the just the thermal plants alone.
Yeah.
Thermal plants alone in Ghana. If you look at it, dependable, it's 2,745. But we have Akosombo.
Yeah.
That is running. I was told they were doing some retrofitting. I'm not too sure whether they have finished with that or not. But we have Akosombo. That is running. So when you indicate that you have bought fuel, and that we were supposed to have, based on the gas that was coming, they were knocking off about 750 megawatts.
So the few plants you mentioned that were off in the West alone shouldn't give us...
The total, those one, look, let me tell you, since last year, TAPCO, and you know, I was telling you that when I was seated with you, I said, these guys said they were still working on it. TAPCO was running on only one unit. The other units, they were working on them. So, and even before the gas pipeline issue came up, they were not running on the full thing there. TICO is there. ASCA is there. Ameri is there. So these are all plants that are all located there in the West. So if you take out what he has just spoken about, if you take out the TAPCO out, you still have this number of plants that are there. You have plants that are also in the East that can also run on that. The question we are asking fundamentally is that these problems he has listed, are they enough to let us be in it?
Are they enough to let us be in a problem?
You see, next time we come here, I'm hoping that we will not be discussing these kind of challenges. I think there are challenges, and we own up to those challenges and see how we can get power to the people quickly.
I see your point, though, but the politicians will never admit that there is.
And across the board.
Your government did same. His government is doing same. I think that's your frustration.
That's absolutely. I mean, when the obvious challenge is there for us to accept and see how we address them into the future, we'll try to dance around it and explain. But again, the ordinary person is not interested in megawatts in the West, megawatts in the East. They're not interested. And we shouldn't even get them interested, because they have to focus on contributing to tax revenue for the country to move on. And I think the fact of the matter is that in the East, there's significant deficit. Asogli can run. Asogli Phase 2 can run. Yeah. KTTP can run. Senate can run. Sen Power can run. A host of them. So if we are still not able to provide enough electricity, for me, my frustration really is that whether they run or not, we will pay them, because we have a long-term contract, take or pay, on these plants. So if you don't have fuel for them, they are home and dry, because ultimately they have to be paid. Okay, the capacity charges.
And we have to provide the fuel.
And we have to pay for sleeping in Dumsor. You understand? We are not enjoying the light, but the bill will come to government, and government will have to pay for it. So you are better off finding fuel for them to run. The advantage you have when you provide fuel and they are not able to run, that becomes on them, because they could not run, so they don't get paid. But if you don't have fuel for them, and they even have technical issues, and you're not, you still have to pay them. So we really need to fix the challenges with the financing, supply of fuel and all of that, to ensure that the plants can run when they have to run, to save the public from paying for plants that are not actually working.
Well, one of the things, yes.
Ben made a point that I think we need to, you see this conversation we're having, until the problem itself, the root cause of the problem is dealt with. Trust me. In the next, I think this is about the third or how many times I have come to
but that's the thing. That's what I'm going to come to when I'm returned from the break. I want to go to the root cause. Ben has already touched on it. That is a big question. All the governments have been dancing around it for years. It's not going away. How do we fix it? Stay with us. You're live on PM Express tonight. My guest in the studio is Benjamin Boakye, Executive Director of Africa Center for Energy Policy. Also with me is Mr. Bawa, Edward Bauer, who is the MP for Bongo. On the telephone line, we've been listening to the spokesperson for the Energy Ministry, Mr. Damwa. Ben, you touched on it at the beginning, that there is a fundamental problem that has been an albatross for years. It's been building. Every government comes and makes it worse. We've introduced several measures to try and deal with this. The loan structure, what is it called? The one in the
ESLA.
The ESLA. We introduced it. It hasn't fixed the problem. Yeah. There's a vicious cycle that sort of is every time accumulates. I tend to believe maybe it's an impossible solution. It's an impossible problem to fix. You disagree, obviously, but what is the solution? What if it's so obvious? Why hasn't the government over the years fixed it?
No, but you see, in many countries, power is a commodity that people will buy, and they will use and pay. Okay, so we have to structure our power sector such that people use electricity and they pay for it, and then independent bodies operate in the sector as business, right? So that the decisions around who distributes power and who generates power are not politically influenced. And that is the only way. And it's been difficult giving that up because those are the areas where contracts get awarded, politicians are interested in it. And you saw, I mean, Onobawa is here. The Ministry of Energy at some point became the procurement officers for power contracts. You understand? And that will not cease if we don't hand over the power sector, to business to actually manage. Government can have interest, but actual control of the sector and how the cash flow runs, we have proven consistently that government cannot own that process.
But the government's fear is that if you do that, the private ordinary person will suffer because that the bottom line is they will have to pay more.
But ask yourself, is the ordinary man not suffering today?
Because the lights are out?
Because you are paying debt and more debt is being created. Mm. So every fuel you buy today, there is a levy for paying old debt, right? And we are not ceasing creating more debt. Like I told you, if the power plants run or not, they get paid. And that becomes debt, on the public. So if we realize at some point that the levies will not suffice, another window will have to be created. And ultimately, it will come back to the consumer for you to pay. If government creates debt, who are they creating it for?
But that is a taboo subject.
It's created for you and I to pay.
No government wants to burden the consumer to pay more.
That's the point I'm making is you are burdening the consumer invariably.
So what's the solution? Case. I mean, but that's the thing.
The solution is to fix the distribution end.
By bringing private managers.
Bringing in private, participation. Because government will not let go of that sector. They appoint everybody in ECG. They control them, right? So they are not able to take independent decisions. Okay. So if we don't allow ECG to run as a business, then we have to let it go into private hands for them. I mean, you saw PDS when they came here. We gave them the company to them. They didn't invest a dime. And all of a sudden, revenue shot up over 100%.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
They even got some to pay their debt.
There was no magic about it. All they did was just to consolidate account and ensure that they can track revenue. And it did the magic. So why is it that our own people are not able to do it?
In fact, they were so successful.
It was the same people who were managing it.
They were so successful. They paid workers on time. Yeah. Workers were happy. Immediately they went, within a month, workers are again being paid with, delayed payments.
So fundamentally, it tells you that the problem is government. The problem is government and the ownership of the decisions and how people are accountable for the decisions that they take. If the head of ECG is not accountable for mismanaging the distribution end, I mean, who gets punished for it? And that is why you have Nana Damwa speaking, even though he works for the ministry. He's not the ECG staff. He's not the one to be engaging on this issue. It's not, the ministry is not supposed to be.
Because power is a huge political issue.
Absolutely. It should be political issue. The agencies responsible. It should be ECG talking to it. It should be Gridco speaking to us why there are challenges. It should be VRA.
They don't understand the politics.
But because they are the ones managing it, they are the ones managing the process, the procurement of fuel and all of that, then they have to come and speak to it. Because ECG wouldn't want to come and talk to it.
But I guess I get your point. That is some say that will be, some will say that is the ideal. But the politician, knowing how power can actually cost you an election. I mean, this government probably is thinking this is an election year. Any sign of Dumsor could spell doom. They have to control that.
We've gone past that fear. We've gone past that fear and that conversation that we still need to keep government there to manage it. And that's why we agreed to let the private sector come in. The process was curtailed because of obvious, lapses that happened. And we have promised time and again to fix it. Check the budget, check the supplementary budget, check the past budget. There were plans to roll a new process out. What has happened to them? So we need to have that fixed and get it done. I mean, if the sector agencies were the ones managing the process, and you know that you're going to shut down the pipeline for pigging, it is the role of PURC to go into their formula to say, we need liquid fuel for 1 month. And therefore, consumers are going to pay for liquid fuel for that period. And then when gas is reintroduced, you revert to the old tariff. So the system runs efficiently so that we don't have to call the ministry. The agencies should be equipped and be competent enough to manage the sector. Yeah, so I mean, where is the PURC in this matter?
Well,
why do they not bring in place the mechanism to ensure that if we bring in liquid fuel, it will be paid for? Because the consumer is happy to pay just for 1 month, buy fuel, if it's a cent that, or a pesewa that will be added to ensure that we offset any difference between gas and liquid fuel. They should be able to do that. And managers of the sector should be able to account for it without government interference or coming to explain to us what terms should be used to describe
the picture that Bernard just painted was a picture under your watch as well when you were at the Energy Ministry. It hasn't changed. It's the same as you left it.
No, the picture has always been the same.
But it depends on the approach.
But it depends on the approach. It depends on the approach. And I'm going to explain something. When you were talking about PURC, I will come to that. PURC is an organization that if they were to vote today, that whether we want them to be there or not, I'll be the first to vote that we should scrap PURC. And I'll give you reasons for that. But you see, if you look generally, our power sector has been...
Why do you want PURC to scrap?
I'll explain. In fact, they're not playing the role they are supposed to play. And the reason is because even though the act that establishes them says that they are supposed to be independent, they are not. They are not. So the purpose for which they are supposed to be there is just withdrawing salaries. Because they are not, if they were to, because the role is to make sure that you protect the suppliers, the consumer one, and then of course the business, the industry. So you create a balance. If you have a situation where you cannot do that, you do not have the free hands to do that, what is the purpose of doing that apart from drawing salary? So for me, PURC is an organization that has at least its usefulness. But back to the issue itself. Because Ben concentrated on the downstream, which is very true. Because if you look at the three functional zones on the value chain, the moment ECG fails to perform and account for the power given to them, it affects every other person upstream.
Yeah.
And so ECG is very critical. Now let's look at something. And he used the word the PDS issue. What was PDS coming? What were they supposed to do? There were fundamental issues that were there that ECG needed to do. Because one of the reasons why they are not able to account for them is because of the losses they make. Technical losses and commercial losses. That's what they were supposed to do. The technical losses, basically, most of them have to do with sometimes even obsolete equipment and what have you. So they needed to replace them. That's why, as part of the condition, there was supposed to be some amount of money invested over 5 years. So that was supposed to be. If you look at the Ministry of Energy's own document that they authored, they call it the Energy Sector Recovery Program that they have authored. As of 2019 January, the technical losses for ECG was 23%. Just on Saturday, the technical losses is now 24.71%. And if you are translating this in terms of monetary, it's around $400 million annually. So it tells you that over a year, in every year, just for technical losses alone, there will be accumulating about 400 million. They cannot account for 400 million dollar worth of, that's about 2 billion. 2 billion worth of power. They cannot account for that. Come back to even just commercial, there's people who default in payment. Those who default in payment on the annual basis, by their own, I'm just using their own document, in a year, it is about $180 million. Out of this, 80% is owned by ministries, departments, and agencies. So it's about government.
Which has always been the case.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. It's about government. So on the basis of these two factors, government said that, look, and I want to use the government because you directed the question. Though, so. Yes, you directed the question to me about that. One was to make sure that all government agencies, apart from the critical areas, were supposed to be put on prepaid. That project has ceased.
Started, but
that project has ceased. The project has ceased. The issue of the technical, what they call it, losses. You know that the Compact 2, greater part of it was supposed to be, if you look at the 300 that was injected first, the 190 basically was supposed to address.
So what is the solution now? What solution will you propose now? Because the problem persists. It's persisted, and so with the funding and getting the right resources.
What we need to do is to be truthful to the facts. Government seems to always create the impression that the very reason why we are saddled with debt in this country is because of excess capacity. And they use that. It's just because you do not have time, but we could have dealt with that. So the solution
as well?
The solution is that first, we must admit that we have these challenges. We must first make sure that the Energy Sector Levy Act that we passed to be able to get this money that on an annual basis, we're talking about 3.6 billion. We should be able to use it and use it properly. Okay. If we use this fund properly, I'm telling you, we don't need the 10 years that the government has given to be able to retire this energy sector.
We'll see how that unfolds. But for the ordinary person, is whether I have light or not. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm grateful that you all joined us.